Anyway, interesting to see a question divide the audience like that. But I'll tell you what didn't divide us. Eve Vegas. It brought us back together.
Yeah, I mean, you've kind of been like a long time partaker, right? Like you've been there multiple years.
Yeah, I've been there several years now. I'm trying to remember exactly how many. It's at least 3, maybe even 5. It's hard for me to remember exactly when I started to go. I'm pretty sure my first Vegas was before I moved out to the West Coast. So that would have been around like 2014-ish, I think, maybe 2013. So yeah, I would say at least 5 Vegases now.
And then I know that we didn't have Eve Vegas last year. Did we have Eve Vegas the year before that? Or has it been like 2 years since we had one?
We did have it the year before that.
Okay, so it's just been 1 year since we've had it.
It's felt like longer though.
Yeah, did you go to the one you've been going, like you went to the year before they canceled, right?
Yeah.
How did that year kind of compare to this year?
Well, before it got canceled, it was an official CCP sponsored event, and certainly compared to this year, it was a lot more focused on Eve stuff. There was presentations and roundtables. I think attendance was larger, even though I was surprised that just how many people came this year. It definitely exceeded my expectations, but it still was a fraction of what it used to be.
Yeah, which I think that probably tracks with it being kind of a community run event versus an official event, right?
Yeah, and to CCP's credit, at the last minute, they pulled some strings and sent some devs. I got to meet CCP Aurora, CCP Ice Cream. Did not get to meet Dopamine, but he was there, and his presence was felt. But they didn't have any, like, special announcements. There was no, like, exclusive trailer or anything along those lines. There were just actually no official EVE content at all, even player run. It was a lot of pub crawling. It was a lot of hanging out. It was a lot of people gambling or seeing shows together, grabbing drinks and dinners, sharing meals. Not a lot of like organized Eve discussion. We definitely took over the Circa bar. That was like the main casino that everything was kind of revolving around. And any time of day you went there, there were Eve players sort of setting up shop there. And it was the place to go to meet up with everybody.
That's pretty cool. It sounds almost like a kind of like an extended Eve meetup more than like an actual like event almost.
Yeah, the vibe was definitely more like that, but at the same time, it did still feel special because you had so many more people coming from so many more places than a regular Eve meetup. Eve meetups tend to be very regional. This was definitely like, I don't know if it literally had an international feel, because other than the CCP folks, I don't know if people were able to come from out of country. But we had people coming from the East Coast, South. They were coming from all over for this, Midwest. Yes. Huge goon presence, huge horde presence.
I was gonna say, speaking of that, like, was there anyone in particular that you like had wanted to meet that was there and you got to meet, or like anyone of like special note that you got to talk to?
In terms of like people that I hadn't met before that I was really excited to meet, I did get to meet CCP Aurora. She's been extremely active with the Alliance tournament. And I feel like of the devs I didn't know this year that I got to know a little bit better and really understand what they did. I think she really stood out. So I was very happy that we got to see each other. I gave her a mask with our Alliance logo on it. And you don't want to monopolize the devs' time because everybody wants to talk to them. I was just glad I got to say hi to her in person and thank her for everything she's done for the AT. Player-wise, I knew there were going to be some people there that I really wanted to see. Like Brisk was there. Always happy to see Brisk. Gobbins was there, which we had a nice long chat. I got to meet him before, though, at some of the SoCal meetups. He's a really great guy. Super fun to talk to. Great Eve mind. And just an overall really nice guy. I got to see the Matani, and the meetup was small enough that we actually got more than 5 seconds to talk to each other, which was kind of cool. I see him at all the Eve Vegases, but he's usually like surrounded by an impenetrable wall of people trying to talk to him. This time around, there weren't enough people to make an impenetrable wall around anything, so I just went up to him on my way back to the hotel room. We wound up having a nice long chat. Great guy as well. Lady Scarlet I got to see. I did run into Hyper Viper, who organized the whole thing. We kind of played phone tag with each other, trying to meet up. Eventually we did. I think the coolest person I saw that I didn't expect to see was Let's see. So I ran into quite a few, but I think the executive dock workers, I would have to say, was probably my most interesting conversation of people that I didn't expect to run into.
Very cool. And there
Yeah,
were
because I had
some.
never met him before. I definitely didn't know he was going to be there. And when we started talking, I didn't even realize who he was. Just kind of came up in passing. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think we talked for like 45 minutes. He was really interesting.
Yeah, super cool. And then we had some court members that were there as well, right?
Yeah, Kira and Arce. We were supposed to have a fourth, but they had to drop at the last minute. But I got to see Kira, one of our more Black Ops oriented pilots, and Arce, who has not been super active because he's had a busted laptop, but he just got it fixed. And Eve Vegas was kind of his kickoff into returning into the Eve folds, and he's since popped on a couple times. It was really a lot of fun. The travel for each of them getting there was horrendous. Arce drove like halfway here, and then work called him for some kind of emergency, and he had to drive all the way back and then to start up the drive again. So he didn't wind up getting there till like a deep Saturday afternoon. And then Kira was even worse. Lots of plane issues, cancellations, weight restrictions, you name it, it happened to her. She didn't get there till, I don't know, like 6 or maybe even 7 o'clock Saturday night. This is when she finally hit the hotel. It's just like, that's half the event gone. So
Yeah.
there's definitely a sense of trying to make up for lost time for those guys.
Yeah, that's too bad. Like, I think that's kind of been a theme lately, but at least, like, I'm glad that they actually got to make it and that they didn't have to cancel entirely.
And we did have fun. I think the first thing, they spent a lot of time with each other, I guess because they were both in the same boat of, missing out on much of the other stuff and also being in Noir together. They got some barbecue on the Fremont Street strip, and then we just hung out for most of the night. Was it Saturday night, I guess? And then Sunday, there's like this hotel, there's a pool on the top of the hotel with a gigantic television screen that they put sports on. So we set up shop in the pool and watched the Eagles game, which was cool because Kira and I are Eagles fans. Arce was a Raiders fan, and my fiance was also a Raiders fan. So
Oh, so it was like
evenly
even.
divided.
Yeah, that's the best kind of watch.
There was some friendly betting, friendly wagering, and lots of shit talk. And it was all in the pool. It was kind of a fun vibe. We didn't like have anything to snack on really because they wouldn't let us bring food in, but it was a chill vibe. And then after that, we went to a buffet and then to this place called Area 15, which I don't recall being there the last time I went to Vegas. If it was, I certainly never heard about it. My God, it is the coolest place ever. It's like a gigantic warehouse that's converted into a series of interactive virtual reality or interactive art installations. Like they had a cocktail bar around a giant tree, and the tree's leaves were LED lights that were synced up to music. So
that sounds super cool.
It was doing different patterns and colors depending on what was going on with the song, and they had like a kind of a fantasy wood, like an elvish wood environment. All blacklit though, like real trippy and psychedelic.
Yeah, it sounds super interesting.
And it had the Omega Mart, which is the thing that we all did together.
What is the Omega Mart?
The Omega
Never
Mart.
heard of this either.
Submit to savings, Andy. It's a supermarket which wants to bring you the best savings at any cost. It's like this dystopian future supermarket with all these really weird or vaguely sinister products in it. Some of them are just weird, like it has corn PM. It's Tylenol PM, but just corn.
What?
There's salted peanuts that is 100% salt, no nuts, but may contain nuts.
All right. It sounds interesting. I'm intrigued. I don't think I would do my shopping there, but I'd at least go look.
You can get condensed moth milk if you're so inclined.
I mean, that just seems economical.
Tessellated fruit cocktail. And all these products are like completely imagined. Like there's the label of it, and then they have like the ingredients list, and it's all fully packaged as if it was an actual thing, and you can pick it up off the shelf and look at it. And then you gotta explore the rest of the store, and there's various idiosyncrasies and staff walking around doing weird things. Like this lady kept walking up and down a couple aisles, hitting various products with a tuning fork, including bags of chips.
Sounds like definitely like an interesting experience.
Very, very cool. And for anyone that's going, take the time to like literally interact with everything. There's like a hole in the wall inside the camping tent in the outdoors section, and you can crawl through it and go into a special area. There's like little racks of 96-hour energy drinks on some of the freezers containing all the other drinks. And if you open up some of those, you may get transported into kind of this nightmarish hall of twisted Coke bottles that leads you into a back area where the factory is. Just gets progressively more interesting the more you pay attention to the details and the more you explore. It was by far the coolest thing we did. Well worth. I mean, it was a long thing. Must have spent at least an hour in there, but it was worth every minute of it.
Huh. Interesting. So I guess getting back to kind of the more Eve-related things, I know we said it was a little bit more like a meetup, but there were still some kind of Eve-specific events. Were there anything
Andy,
where
there was Salt After Dark as a product?
Salt After Dark?
It's the most Eve-related thing we could possibly have found.
I mean, fair. That's fair. I guess as far as Eve events, was there anything that kind of stood out to you that was like your favorite?
Honestly, no. We didn't really do much Eve-wise. There was a big pub crawl, but our flight was delayed, not nearly as much as Kira's, but it was still delayed. So by the time we landed, that was pretty much done. We threw our bags down, and neither my fiance or I were feeling particularly well because we had some really bad airport food. And so we just kind of like chilled for a little bit, and by the time we were feeling all right, that pub crawl was long over and people just chilling at the Circa bar. And Saturday, we had a lot of stuff planned that was just us, or it was me trying to find Kira at Arce to hang out. So there wasn't a whole lot of Eve stuff. There was supposed to be a bigger hangout at the stadium swim on Sunday, but they jacked the price up for the football game, and a lot of people were kind of turned off by that, which I totally understand. So it wound up only being the four of us hanging out, and I think there was a group of Bastion players in a different section of the area. It was a huge place. So we saw like Bastion flags somewhere, but they were kind of keeping to themselves. And that was pretty much it. Like there were other events going on, but they were either at times which weren't great for us, or we just missed them due to travel restriction.
Gotcha. Well, we kind of alluded to this a little bit, but how was your return trip from Vegas?
Fucking nightmare. Vegas did not want us to leave. Every one of us had travel issues except for Arce, who was leaving with his own truck. Kira had another delay. It wasn't nearly as bad. She was able to leave that night. Our flight got delayed and then canceled, and then we weren't able to get another flight the next day or the day after that. So we were kind of figuring out like what we were going to do, and Alaska, to their credit, at least gave us a hotel room and like refunded us and stuff, but we still had no way home. So we cycled through a couple of different options of how we were going to get from Vegas to the Bay Area with no plane and no car.
Wow.
There's no train we can get. And we had to do it basically within a day because we both had work. So we took off the next day because there was no way we were going to make it back Monday. It's just impossible. So we wound up going with a one-way car rental, which is a thing apparently. And so we picked up a car at the Vegas airport and took it to the SF airport and dropped it off. And apparently that's fine. It wound up being a 14-and-a-half-hour trip from leaving our hotel to finally getting into our apartment.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a long drive.
Yeah, it was brutal.
I think I've driven from around where I am down to like Sacramento, which is I think an 11-hour drive. I don't know if I've done farther than that personally, but I would not do that if I had the choice to just fly. So
and this is all after like going to the airport, going through airport screening, sitting at the airport for like 2 hours, at least 2 hours, to try to figure out what was going on. And then like an hour to get from the airport to the hotel we had to stay at and check in. Like, we were just so exhausted because it feels like we already did the travel, but then we had 14 more hours of travel to do.
Yeah, and it's also at the end of the trip when you're like finally ready to get home too. Like I feel like that'd be
Mm-hmm.
awful.
And we both had to call out of work, so we already felt shitty about that. It's just like one thing after another kept going wrong. Luckily,
But
we didn't run into any car trouble or anything like that on the
yeah, I
way.
was
It
gonna
was like
say,
the
but
one nice thing.
you did make it back successfully, so that's what matters.
Yep, we made it. All good. Our pet was fine. As we didn't like plan to leave him alone for that long, so we were kind of concerned about that. But turns out everything kind of worked out, thankfully. But man, they did not make it easy. Apparently, the deal was the flight crew that they were using for that plane, because they had experienced so many delays that day, they had spent more time in the air than they were legally allowed to. So that due to FAA rules, they literally couldn't send them back on the plane, and there was no other replacement crew. And all the other flights the next day and the day after were to capacity. Either they always were, or the cancellations from that night kind of pushed them over. So there was just no possible solution. It was just nothing we could really do about it. There wasn't even anybody to get mad at. It was just, that was how it is, you know?